And if you're afraid to bet on yourself, all I can say is that you got to find ways to acknowledge how you've shown up for yourself in your life. The evidence is there, and becoming an entrepreneur is just using that evidence to fund your faith. Hey, my name is Stephanie Simmons, and I'm completely obsessed with living in a culture of freedom and helping you maneuver your way through the chaos to the calm. As a small city mom of 6, I took my life into my own hands, quit my job, and went all in on my side hustle, creating the freedom to not only make my own schedule, but to make time for the people and things that matter most in life. Working from home, I now have an online business teaching others how to realize their passions, map out their goals in business and in life, and make those goals their new reality. I'm just over here telling it exactly like it is as we dive in on topics like burnout, balancing it all, finding joy, and dreaming up those crazy cool next chapters of your life. Business, mindset, breaking barriers, and showing up for yourself and the people you care about are all things we talk about here. Ready to become the curator of your best life? Lean in, take a listen, and let me challenge you and cheer you on to creating a life you absolutely love. This is the Freedom Culture Podcast. Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Freedom Culture Podcast. We are at number 7, and today it's all about 2 weeks' notice, and are you ready to give it? Shocking, right? I love this episode. I like everything I have planned. I'm definitely going to talk about Amy Porterfield's book of the same title, 2 weeks' notice. Fits right in with this whole topic of talking about, are you happy in your job? So if you are working for someone else in any kind of way that does not bring you self-employment income, some of this can relate to your own business as well. So remember to just think about it in the work that you do. Are you happy? Are you wanting to be there? If you find yourself questioning this, you are not alone. Amy definitely points out the staggering stats of 73% of employees are considering leaving their jobs. I think that's crazy. They're actually thinking about it right now. Are you one of those people? Maybe. If you are, keep listening. If you're not and you think, yeah, I'm happy, I want to challenge you a little bit. What does happy mean? So are you just okay with your job? Do you like the money that it gives you or the stability or what is it? So I'm always super curious about this. And if you are, happy, that's wonderful. That's what I want for you, is for you to be happy. If you're feeling like, is this all there is? Then definitely keep listening. If you're feeling like, I'm happy, but I think it's time for something new, then you're 100% in the right place. So hopefully I've hit the nail on the head for one of those things for you. But I do want to share some stats, specifically with regards to women. So Amy's book and what I'm going to talk about definitely is a little bit more targeted to women. If you're a man, this doesn't mean it can't apply to you, but I do want to focus a little bit on women here for a minute, especially with these stats. So these stats do come right out of her book. This is copyrighted in 2023, so they're certainly recent enough. Some of these stats to me are staggering, but they do show why we have had such a great resignation. So maybe you've heard about the great resignation, maybe you haven't. Basically, people in record numbers are leaving their jobs. They're quitting, they're finding new things. Whether they're quitting their job and going to another job or quitting their job and joining the entrepreneurial world, we don't know exactly, not in these stats anyway, but there's a reason for this great resignation, right? And a lot of people suggest that it did come out of the pandemic, of people just all of a sudden getting kind of shaken in their lives and saying, like, is this all there is? And really not being happy with their work. And it's the other side of that too. A lot of people really did love working from home. And when it came back to, it's time to go back to the office and back to work in that building or wherever they were going, they didn't want to do it. And I love that in the sense of they chose doing what feels best for them. And that's really what it's about, right? So I think it is fairly shocking that almost half of Americans fear being laid off in the next year. I think that's also pretty shocking in that a lot of people are just fearing that they're going to lose their job. And to me, that's one of the key points to me not being able to understand why we give so much to another person's business. Like, I believe in having employees, obviously. I have employees. And I do believe certain people are meant to be employees. That's just what they feel best doing. They feel the security in it or whatever. But I actually don't feel secure as an employee. I have not felt very secure. I don't think in any role that I have been as an employee. So no wonder I'm an entrepreneur, of course, by now. But Tomorrow, you could literally get downsized. You could be laid off. Your role could become insignificant. I've seen that happen. I've been fired, I've been hired, I've been laid off, I've been all the things in my years as an employee. And none of that is fun, right? It's a change, but I do believe, of course, that all that does happen for a reason. It's just, are you ready to be laid off tomorrow? Most people would say no, you know? So let's look at some of the stats for women. Women are paid just 82 cents on the dollar of their male colleagues, which is crazy, of course. Where's the other 18%? Like, when are we going to get that? Can we get it? Because we are humans. We're just as effective at our jobs as men. There is no difference between a man and a woman as far as what they can accomplish in a workplace. And I'm just going to leave that right there. That's not negotiable. It's not a point to argue. But men are promoted at 30% higher rates than women during their early career stages. And that goes to the point of men are naturally regarded and sought after for leadership roles well over women often. 84% of millennials have experienced burnout at their current jobs. I can see that. Let's just go over one more stat about women. I want to find the one that I was thinking of sharing. Women make up 47.7% of the global workforce, which I think is amazing. Not quite enough, of course, but only 6.4% of those are CEO roles at S&P 500 companies. And the men are promoted higher, of course. And the 82 cents on the dollar of their male colleagues is even worse, of course, for women of color, who make as little as 71 cents to each of their white male colleagues' dollars. And 50% of women in STEM fields eventually leave their jobs because of hostile work environments. So it's no wonder women are working in all different types of jobs and feeling very underappreciated, underpaid, overworked, right? So I totally get that. If you're feeling any of these things and these things are somewhat shocking to you, then of course, let's just keep going here. But I think that the point here is we have a lot of women in history to thank for bringing us this far. It's not that long ago that women couldn't even apply for a business loan without a man's signature. Maybe 40 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago, that's not that long ago, right? And why on earth would it have taken that long to get to that point? But I am grateful for the women who have come before us, who have blazed this path, who have allowed me to be an entrepreneur. I'm grateful for that because I love what I do, and I wouldn't have got the opportunity to do that had they not tried it for themselves. I think right now most people are questioning not just their jobs in their lives, but they're questioning everything, right? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? What is it I'm really meant here to be here to do? And I do think that people often pick up a book called 2 Weeks Notice because they are just a bit fed up, perhaps. Maybe they've gotten to that extreme where it's like, okay, you know what? Enough is enough. I got to find a way to get out of this. Definitely. It's certainly an answer to that. And Amy totally takes you through the entire thing, what to do before giving the notice and what to do after and all of that. So if you're thinking about it, definitely pick up her book, 2 Weeks Notice by Amy Porterfield. But aside from that, when we're really thinking about our lives, we really do need to keep asking ourselves the questions frequently are we feeling happy with what we're doing, what we're spending our time doing? We spend a heck of a lot of time working in our lives. I personally don't agree with that either. I would like to not work half as much as I do, but that's a desire of mine. That's a want. So of course I am trying my best to move towards that because I think it is possible to work less and make just as much money and be fulfilled. So that's my goal, and trust me, I'm going to take you along as I find this. So her book, 2 Weeks Notice, Find the Courage to Quit Your Job, Make More Money, Work Where You Want, and Change the World, is that's all that it's about. And I love it. I did read it about a year ago. I had owned 2 businesses at that time that I still have now. There's in-person service businesses. So I was definitely trying to get into the online world where I am now. And it was a really great resource to read to give me insight into what it is I needed to start to look at. And at that time, I thought I was ready, but there was a lot going on. It was a very tumultuous time. It wasn't really the best time for me to start something new. Not that there's a great time for that, but time-wise and everything that was going on in my personal life, it just wasn't a great idea at that time. And I'm glad that I did wait a little bit until things were a bit more calm and I could make the big decisions. So I did leap into the online world, and that's really what she's talking about in this book is the online world. So my passion is helping women to become online entrepreneurs and just love what they're doing without being so overwhelmed by the process. So that's what I'm doing. If you are interested in that at all, you can go check me out, stephsimmons.co on Instagram or my website. If it's in real time, we're not quite live yet with the website, but it's coming. And I am so excited about it. It's almost finished, so that should be up soon. But if you're really thinking about, and you're probably still listening to this, maybe because I haven't really got into the meat of the episode yet, but if you're still listening, then I'd have to consider that you might have an inkling of, okay, it's time for me to do something different. Even maybe in your own business. So if you're a business owner already, but maybe you've, fallen into the trading time for money part of business, because that is very possible. If you're an in-person service business, that happens when you're with a client, you receive the funds, and then away you go. There is no residual income necessarily coming in that way. So that means if you want to make more money, you have to use more of your time. And that's not what I want to do, and it's not what I help other people do. So if you're interested in that, let's just dive in here, okay? We are talking about freedom, of course, because this is the Freedom Culture Podcast. So we're talking about all the freedoms: financial freedom, lifestyle freedom, creative freedom, freedom to work when you want to work, time freedom. That's what we're talking about. Those things are super important to me. And I know that it's all easy to say, and, people say, well, I'd love to start something, but it's scary, right? It is scary, of course. And if you're afraid to bet on yourself, all I can say is that you got to find ways to acknowledge how you've shown up for yourself in your life. The evidence is there, and becoming an entrepreneur is just using that evidence to fund your faith. So what does that even mean? In your life, you've done things that have allowed you to be where you are now. And, there's value in that. And I think a lot of people discount that. They don't look at necessarily all of their accomplishments in the same way. Like, those are wins, and stacking those wins allow you to be where you are right now, which is in a place where you're listening to this message, obviously for a reason. What's the reason? Is it time to start something new? Because if it is, definitely go ahead and listen to my episode on Is There a Business in You? But that can maybe kind of help give you some ideas. But we're all talking about the same thing here. It's freedom. And I don't know about you, but that has been something I have been striving to enjoy for a long time. And this whole idea of, are you ready to give notice? And are you ready to move on to something different if you're not happy with your job? Obviously isn't a new idea, but it might be new to you. So what can we do from this point forward? In Amy's book, she does walk you through to what to do before you give notice. So, she's going to talk a bit about how to perhaps maybe set yourself up financially. I know I did that. I did quit my job. I gave my 2 weeks notice, okay, in 2019. That was the last time I was an entrepreneur. And I'm telling you, the feeling of when I actually left the building and was not going back, and I no longer, had that responsibility of that job, I felt the most freedom. It was a great feeling. I wish I could duplicate it every day, really. I mean, I guess I do, essentially. Never thought about it that way. I am living in that because I'm an entrepreneur now, and I love what I'm doing. But that feeling of just finally being out on my own and, okay, it's all just me now, Steph, right? It's all just me. What am I going to do with it? I felt like the world had just sort of fallen at my feet and I could just choose anything. And I chose to stay in that feeling for as long as possible. Does that mean there weren't fears? Of course I was scared. Of course I was, worried about how it was going to work out. But I don't tend to let fear or worry overcome my desire for the more positive things. So, it's fear is not going to prevent me from trying to get what I want. So, and I always kind of say that, when I want something, it can be quite a dangerous thing because I'm going to get it. I'm going to find a way to get it. Whether once I get it, I really want it or not, that's a different story. But I'm going to go after what I want and I'm going to try to get it. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So I do talk about, when I quit my job and how I came to that decision and all that in episode 2. So take a listen in that if you're interested in kind of hearing the mental progress I had to make that happen. But honestly, it is the best decision I ever made. So am I here to tell you to quit your job? No. But if you're still listening, I know you thought about it, because there's no way you're still listening to me talk about this if you haven't had the thought. So what do you do now? Now that you've thought about it, you can't unthink it, right? You can't go back and think, I guess it was just a fluke thought. No, it came into your head for a reason. You're not happy with what you're doing, and that's okay. It's scary to admit, maybe, because it feels like, you've worked up to a certain point to get to where you are, in your career, in your job, perhaps. Maybe you've, received promotions and accolades for the work that you've done, and that's all fantastic. But that's not the question here. The question is, do you want to keep doing that? She's in the room I think she's a content creator for Tony Robbins' company, actually, which is fairly shocking. If you don't know who Tony Robbins is, please Google the man. He's amazing. I have learned a lot from Tony over the years. I've been following his stuff and I've jumped into some of his programs. I've definitely learned a lot. So I have a lot to share in that regard. I've jumped into so many courses and programs to help develop my skills and help me be a better guide for others, especially female entrepreneurs who I want to help in the online space. I've definitely been doing my homework and preparing my own business as well to be successful, as well as helping other people. So she talks about being in this room with a lot of online male business owners, no women, of course. And she remembers hearing their stories and learning about their business models, and then just realizing in that moment that she's not free. She's not free to do that. She's there in that room just taking notes. She's not asked to be, right now, Amy would be asked to speak in that room. She'd be asked to give her advice because she has become that successful. But at that time, she was there to take notes, there to learn from them and to, create content, I guess. But she realized that they were all there charting their own paths, and she was just following someone else's script, being in a job, doing what they had told her to do for forever. That's all she knew, was the employee model. So she decided from that day forward that she was on a mission to figure out how to be the boss of her own life. And at that time, there was no roadmap for her. There wasn't anything available. I don't think she even knew any women doing it. And by the time she did find one, she did have a conversation with them. So if you are considering starting something of your own, I'd say the first thing to do is try to get clear on what that idea is, of course. And when I did reference the Is There a Business in You episode, I do just kind of help to sort of clarify some ideas and kind of brainstorm a little bit on the episode. But oftentimes we really do know what it is. We just have ignored it for so long that it becomes unclear when we sit down to go, okay, what do I want to do? And we can't answer that question. You remember when you're like 14, 15 years old, you're in high school, and they go, okay, well, what do you want to do? Because you got to start planning now so you can take the right courses and get into the right college and the right university, and maybe even planning before that age. But I remember thinking, I don't know what the heck I want to do with the rest of my life. I mean, I could choose that, sure, but I'm not saying it lights me up. I mean, it might be a good career, but imagine that. Like, it's still so shocking to me. My son's about to go into grade 9, and that's usually the year where they start to ask you, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And it's like, to me, that's such a crazy question. If somebody asked me, what do I want to, right now, even in this moment, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? I'm not going to be able to tell you. Because I'm not going to choose one thing. That's not going to become who I am and everything I do for the next 30 or 40 years of my life. Absolutely not. And to be honest, at that point in my life, at 15, I probably knew that anyway. I wasn't really meant to do one thing for the next 30 years. And it's not just one thing, right? You maybe move into different roles, but to work for the same company and to be surrounded by the same, products or ideas, like, no. But mind you, it took me until I was 30 years old to realize that entrepreneurship might be for me. So, I worked in the workforce for 15 years before even realizing that. But I'm glad I did at that age. And it took me another 5 years to really actually start my own business from scratch. So don't think that this is necessarily an overnight thing, but it can be. It doesn't have to be how I did it. It doesn't have to be how Amy did it. It can be whatever you want, and that's the point, is you get to make the choices. So In my newsletter that went out this morning, I talked about your choices, and how our lives are a culmination of the choices that we've made up until this point. And I always get a lot of pushback on this point because people say, well, not everybody gets to make choices. And I think, well, if you think about it deeply enough, of course we do. We all have choices. We can choose whether we stay in things, whether we don't, whether we let fear take over and keep us somewhere thinking that we don't have a choice, right? But that is still a choice. Now, that's not maybe the easiest thing to understand or the easiest thing to say, okay, I understand when people say not everybody has a choice. I get it. There's different circumstances than what I know. But I do still stick to the thought that we all have made choices to get us to where we are right now. That doesn't mean things don't happen to us. Yes. Things happen to us and for us all the time. Life is happening for us. And when you start to sort of adapt that mentality over it's happening to us all the time, all day long, oh, this is happening to me, then your choices start to look differently too. So if we have made choices to get us to where we are right now, that also means that we can choose different right here, right now, if we want to. We can choose how our life is going to be. We choose to stay at a job. That's a choice. We could quit if we want to. And people say, well, I can't quit because if I quit, then I don't have any money. I can't pay my bills, all those things. But you know what? The funny thing is that if you lost your job tomorrow, if they handed you the slip that said your job no longer exists and you're fired, well, what would you do then anyway? You'd figure it out. You'd figure it out because you have to. It's no different. It's just that you're inserting yourself in the situation instead of waiting for someone else to put you there. So there's power in that. And it really does feel that powerful. Trust me, because I felt it. It is powerful in deciding that you're no longer going to let someone else make that decision for you about your life and your future at their company or whatever. You're not putting the power in their hands. And that was probably the most liberating part about quitting that job, is that I took all my power back. It's all in my hands. Is that scary as shit? Yes. It's totally scary. That means I have to actually trust this girl right here. That could be scary because she could be a little, out there, right? I've gone on a bit here. I hope that you really do feel like you have the ability to choose your own life and your path forward. If you really feel like you're at the point of that you want to give 2 weeks notice, this was the question. Are you ready? So are you ready or not? Are you ready to have the freedoms that you can't have in the role that you have? And I'm not here to get you to quit your job. Remember that. These are your choices. I'm just here to talk about it and what it looks like on the other side. Every employee role that I've been in, I've felt the gender bias, all the work environments. I've been in situations where the higher ups naturally look towards men for senior roles and leadership roles, assuming that I can't command a meeting and trying to cut off my legs before I even get started. All the crap we endure as women trying to make our mark in the workplace. I just wasn't buying into that, And I'm not saying that in a negative way that workplace meant to do that. I don't believe they did. I just think that maybe they hadn't been shook enough, right? Women are here. We're here to make an impact in this world. And if you don't know that by now, well, you better find out. You better ask somebody because it's happening. And if you're not part of that, then I don't know where that leaves you. I want to be part of it. And if you don't want to be part of that, it's fine. I mean, you are part of it in the workplace if that's where you are in a way. So make an impact there too. If that's all you feel that you can do right now, as opposed to jumping out on your own and you feel like, no, you know what, I can actually make an impact here, then do that. But that's what it's about. We're talking about living life by your own design, choosing what is in it. If you choose the job to be in it, that's your choice. Amazing. Great. Be happy doing that. If it allows you to have creativity and it allows you to control your financial future, wonderful. But most of the time, the employee model just doesn't facilitate that. You don't get to work when you want. You don't get to make your own hours. Big part of me becoming this is because I wanted to be there for my kids. I just wanted to be able to go to the friggin' gymnastics competition without having to tell somebody or ask somebody or call in sick and pretend that I'm sick and when I'm not, when I just want to go do the things I want to do, right? So I know that people are struggling with that constantly in the workplace. Is just, they can't even go get a spa session. They can't even schedule it because it's so difficult with their work schedules. And we are overworking, of course. Let's not forget that. We're working far more than we should ever be working. Even 40 hours a week in my mind, that's too much. Do I work less than that? Definitely not. But I am ambitious. I do have a lot of free time. I'm single. Like, I have time that I can devote to that. It's not always going to be that way, right? There are going to be times coming soon where I'm really going to want to devote that time to other things. And I'm preparing myself for that. But that's my choice. I get to choose how many hours I want to work in my business or not, because it's mine. If I want to stay up all night like I did last night, I stayed up half the night because I felt inspired and I wanted to do the work. I just wanted to. So I did, right? Does that necessarily make today easier for me? No, but who cares? It doesn't matter because I didn't have to go roll into an office today. I work from home and I did the things I want to do and I'm recording this podcast. So there are so many benefits. And if you think I'm trying to sway you, I am, because I want to know what's next for you. And I want to see you create something that shows authentically who you are. And if you can do that in the workplace, I'm interested in that too. So reach out to me on Instagram, stephsimmons.co. Look for the things that I can offer you. If you want a little help with this, of course, I have a consult right now. If you're listening to this in real time, it still exists. It may not always be that I have one-on-one consults available, because obviously that's a trading time for money thing. Is we can't always do that. It becomes a bit unsustainable. But right now they're available. So jump in there with me, have a couple hour conversation with me and see what we can hash out for you. That is what I'm great at. So if you have no idea what you want to do, but you can't keep doing what you're doing, then please reach out. Book a consult. You can find that on my Instagram as well. You can just DM me one-on-one as one word, and we'll send you the link there to get in there. I also have a free discovery call right now, so you can definitely hop in a 15-minute with me and just see if we're even a fit. I'm a guide. I'm here to serve you. So if whatever I can do to help you, that's what I want to do. So I'm super passionate about all things helping people become online entrepreneurs. So if you want to know how, jump in with me. And grab Amy's book, 2 Weeks Notice. I love it. It's a great resource. There's a ton of other resources too. I'm always talking about them in my newsletter, Freedom Fridays. It comes out every Friday morning. We just hit the 10th edition. I'm super proud of it. It's jam-packed with all kinds of good things. It lets you know when there's a new podcast episode happening as well. So check it out. And are you ready? Let's go. Yes, you just made it to the end of another episode of the Freedom Culture Podcast, and I'm so happy that you did. My goal with each episode is always to offer some type of inspiration for you in your life and business. Thanks for tuning in, and if you found the show helpful or are looking for any of the resources mentioned in this episode, just hop on over to my website at stephsimmons.co and sign up. That way you can get notified when there's new episodes, or you can follow me over on Instagram at stephsimmons.co or at Freedom Culture Podcast. And you will see new episodes posted there as well. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll catch you next time on the Freedom Culture Podcast.